So this is a video I've been wanting to do for some time, and the reason is it's the kind of video that I wish had been around for me to watch back in 2019. Let me explain. If you know me, you know that my background is Western RPGs and MMOs. I cut my teeth on the likes of Ultima and Wizardry, and I grew up playing EverQuest and World of Warcraft. In fact, for years, I had a blog called Of Course I'll Play It, because I played just about damn near every MMO that came out. In 2019, a little game came out called Genshin Impact. You've probably heard of it. It was available on mobile, PC, and PlayStation. Before this game, I'd had nothing but terrible experiences with mobile games. And in fact, I never saw any mobile game really as a real game at all. But this was on PC and PlayStation, and the teaser showed this beautiful open-world RPG similar to Breath of the Wild. And I'm like, well, that looks like fun. So I started playing it on the PlayStation. And for a while, it felt exactly like the open-world RPGs I was familiar with, but only for a very short while. Because then the game started asking me to add more characters and to level them up in ways that I didn't understand. And then it drowned me in a tide of currencies and materials and mechanics that really weren't explained at all. And I'm like, I just want to level and play my one character, my character. But that really wasn't the game. And let me tell you, I ditched that thing like yesterday's pajamas. Because it wasn't really an RPG, it didn't meet my expectations. It was a gacha game. And I really didn't understand what that meant. So that's what this video is about. Listen, you cannot swing a dead cat on the internet right now without hitting at least a few YouTube videos featuring appealing anime characters running around these gorgeous worlds. And you're thinking, well, that seems like something I'd enjoy. But at the same time, you've heard they're gacha games, and you've heard that gacha is synonymous with exploitive, money-grabbing, free-to-play monetization techniques, and you're thinking, well, maybe that's something I want to stay away from. Well, I'm here to tell you that both of these are true. And in this episode, what I want to do is to allow you to understand the core tenets of the good stuff while giving you the ammunition to mitigate the exploitive practices, or at least to be able to make informed decisions about them. Because I have come to love these kinds of games, and there's a really good reason for that. Not all of them, probably not even most of them, but some of the most recent gacha games have really good gameplay. Arknights is a fantastic tower defense game. Wuthering Waves is this gorgeous open-world game where traversal is an absolute joy. And Honkai Star Rail is an extremely well-crafted turn-based strategy game with luscious, gorgeous environments. And Zenless Zone Zero is a fun, lighthearted game with excellent action-based combat gameplay. These games are delving into AAA quality territory. But to get through to the good stuff, you're going to have to navigate all of the trappings. So let's get to it. In a typical Western RPG, you, the player, are represented by a single character in the game. Whether that character is Aloy, or Rook, or just your hunter in World of Warcraft. The game is centered on your character, and your job as the player is to progress that character through the world and to raise its power. In a gacha game, this is not the case. The game is not about a single character. You, the player, represent the account, and the account represents a collection of characters, and the game is about collecting and raising the power of all the characters on your account. And this is what can be deceiving, because often the game will start you out playing a single character. You're Rover in Wuthering Waves, or Stell in Honkai Star Rail. But make no mistake, that character is just one in your collection, and ultimately probably not even the best one. As the game progresses, you'll find that you may even choose not to play that character at all, except for the parts where the story requires it. So it's really important to realize that you, the player, are not represented by that character. The game is about the collection of characters you're going to build. And from that collection, you're going to form teams, and then you'll use those teams to participate in the gameplay. Don't get attached to your first character. Okay, so let's talk about how you level those characters. In a Western RPG, you level your protagonist by playing the game. You kill monsters, you complete quests, and those things award you experience, and over time, experience raises your level, and you become more powerful. This is pretty much the progression path of every game like this. But that's not how you level the characters in your collection in a gacha game. In a gacha game, to raise your character's level, you literally just spend materials and currencies. And then you can raise your character levels as rapidly as you want, as long as you have the materials and currencies to dump into them. In fact, the UI for these games encourages you to dump the materials in a wholesale fashion with auto-add shortcuts and that sort of thing. Now, you do acquire those characters through gameplay, but ultimately, all you're doing is spending materials and monies to raise a character's level. This is why often you'll go from level 1 to 20 for a particular character instantly, because as long as you may have the money and the resources, you can raise it to whatever your current cap is. But here's the thing. That's only one vector of the character's progression. In just about every gacha, there are at least 3 vectors to raising a particular character's power. There's the level, which we just talked about, but then there are the character skills, which are leveled separately, and those require a different set of resources. And then there's the character's gear, which again requires even a different set of resources. And all of those resources are acquired by playing or participating in various in-game activities. Now, I wouldn't worry too much about what the materials are actually called, because it's different in every game, and it's most likely not going to make a lot of sense anyway. If the game is good, it's going to tell you where to go and what to do to acquire those resources, regardless of what they're called. And while we're here, let's talk a little bit about the character's gear. Because again, coming from a Western RPG, this is going to be a source of confusion. In short, each character's gear will typically consist of two parts, their weapon and their equipment. Only neither of these things are going to be called those words, which will make it even harder to understand. For instance, in Honkai Star Rail, your weapon is called a light cone, and your equipment are called relics. In Zenless Zone Zero, your weapon is a W engine, and your equipment are disk drives. And in Wuthering Waves, your weapon is called, strangely enough, a weapon. But your equipment are called echoes, and you acquire them by killing creatures out in the world and then collecting their ghost images. Yeah, I know, it's a thing. But the important thing to realize is that you have to acquire these and level them up separately from the character itself. And this is typically actually a part of the game where the player has very little agency, because the stats associated with the equipment you acquire will be random in nature, which means you'll spend a lot of time accumulating and discarding trash pieces of equipment that don't have the stats you want, while searching for the pieces that do. It's not great, but it's the nature of the game. Now, fortunately, some of the more recent gacha games have come to realize that players don't much enjoy this particular aspect of the genre, and so they've begun to provide the players some means of agency over the stats for their equipment. For instance, this is what the record store in Zenless Zone Zero is for. So to recap, you're leveling a collection of characters to form teams to play the game. Each character is leveled along at least 3 vectors: their level, their skills, and their equipment. There are of course variations to this, but you'll find this to be the case across the family of Hoyoverse games to be sure, and so far it's been the case for the other gacha games that I've played as well. All right, now that we've talked about how to level up your characters, let's talk about the materials and all of the various currencies in your typical gacha game. And honestly, this can be one of the most overwhelming parts of any gacha, and for good reason, because there are just so freaking many. Let's break it down, and then maybe it won't be quite so intimidating. First of all, the materials. Honestly, the best advice I can give you regarding materials is literally to not fret over the names and the types and the quantities, at least too much. Through play, you're going to learn over time what materials are used to level up which parts of your character, and what you'll need to do in order to get them. I will say this though, and this is important. Every gacha game is about acquiring resources, and then smartly spending those resources. The games are designed so that resources will be plenty at the beginning, but then increasingly scarce the further you get into the game. That's just the nature of the game. So while you shouldn't cripple your ability to play the game by not ever spending resources, at the same time, don't frivolously blow through resources either. If you're new to a gacha game and you're able to complete the game's content at your current level, then don't unnecessarily level your characters just because you can. Let the game's challenges be your guide as to whether or not it's time to level up your characters or not. Now regarding currencies, and again, this can be pretty daunting, but as it turns out, just about every gacha game shares a certain collection of types of currencies. So at the least, let's just dive into these for a bit. First, there is the in-game currency. This is the base currency, and some quantity of it is used for just about everything you do in the game. You can think of this as the gold in your typical MMO, right? In Zenless Zone Zero, these are called dinnies. In Honkai Star Rail, they're called credits. By the way, this is a heavily deflated currency. You're going to have quantities of it in the millions and expect to spend quantities in the thousands and tens of thousands regularly. The next currency is your daily energy currency. Now, this is a mechanic that's a holdover from most free-to-play games, and it's a practice that all of us Western RPG players absolutely loathe. Essentially, these games will limit the amount of time you can participate in certain daily activities by making you spend this currency, which only regenerates over time. And of course, there are ways to replenish this currency by means that cost money. So the idea is you can play the game for a certain amount of time each day for free, but if you want to continue playing the game that day, you're going to have to spend some money. Now, fortunately, this is a trend that current gacha games are actually really starting to back away from. They allow you to do more things in game that don't require this currency. They'll also allow you to bank up the currency so that what you don't spend one day, you can have to spend the next, and they're giving you more ways to replenish it. Every gacha game will have some form of this currency. In Zenless Zone Zero, this is called battery charge. And finally, the third currency I want to talk about is what I call the pull currency. And it's probably the most important currency in the game, as it determines your ability to acquire new characters through pulling, which I'm going to talk about in a second. In Honkai Star Rail, this is called Stellar Jade. In Zenless Zone Zero, this is Polychrome. And again, this currency exists in every gacha game in some form or another. Now, there are actually more currencies than this, but these are the main ones to be aware of. I guess it's probably worth mentioning there is at least one other currency I should talk about, and that's the one that you get in the store that you trade cold hard cash for. You buy this currency, and then you can use it to acquire store items such as outfits, skins, or whatever, and then you can also trade it one for the pull currency. And this is how you spend money to acquire characters. Okay, so we've talked about your collection of characters and the materials and currencies that you need to level them. But how do you actually acquire those characters? Well, some of them will be given to you for free just through the normal course of the game. But soon enough, you're going to come to the part of the game where you're going to use banners and pulls for acquiring new characters. Now, first of all, let me put those in Western RPG terms. A banner in Gacha is just nothing more than a loot chest. That's all there is to it. The metaphor may be different, but the mechanic is still the same. You open the chest to acquire one of multiple items that may be in the chest, selected at random. And a pull is just simply the act of opening that chest and seeing which of the several random items that you got. So that's it, really. It's not all that different at all. And in fact, if you've ever opened a booster pack for any collectible card game ever, then it's a mechanic you're already familiar with. Now, to make that pull, you're going to have to spend some of the pull currency that I talked about previously. And you can acquire the pull currency just through playing the game. But you can also replenish it at a one-to-one exchange with the currency that you buy at the store. Every Gacha game has banners. They may be called different things, but they all have them. In Wildering Waves, they're called convenes. In Zenless Zone Zero, they're called signal searches. This is the fundamental way that Gacha games make their money. Now, I'm not going to go too deeply into the actual mechanics of various banners and the different types of banners that Gacha games typically have. I will say this, though. Chinese law requires that developers spell out the exact percentage rates of obtaining any particular item a loot chest roll may have, which is actually more than you get from your average slot machine in Vegas, right? So the information is there if you care to read it, and you definitely should. I also want to add this. Is this pay to win? Well, yes and no. No, because they do provide you with the pull currency through playing the game. And there is a whole class of players that never spend a dime on these games. And you can just turn to YouTube to find free-to-play players beating the hardest content in the game using only the characters they acquired by playing the game. So no, it is not required to spend money to succeed in these games. But is it easier? Yeah, it is. And are the most powerful characters acquired only through the banners? Yeah. Will you be able to acquire every character in the game that you want without spending any money? Highly unlikely. And trust me, these games are designed to make you want every character. So just like walking to a casino in Vegas, you absolutely can have a blast without gambling at all. But is the temptation to gamble going to be strong? Well, yeah, you bet it is. And ultimately, it's going to be up to you to decide how to spend your money and how much of it to spend. I'd also like to offer up this additional bit of advice that I personally like to follow. I like to look at it as I would a subscription for an MMO. Most of these games have some sort of seasonal pass that lasts just about a month and gives you some extra goodies for leveling up through the pass, and typically costs about the same as a month of subscription for an MMO, around 10 or 15 bucks. I find this to be a pretty good value if I plan on playing the game through the month. Look, games are not free to make, and if a developer is providing me solid value for my time, then they deserve a little bit of my money. So maybe let that be your guide. Okay, so I hope this has given you a little bit of what you need to know to approach Gacha. Look, there is a lot to like here. These games have become incredibly good, and they are providing real quality gameplay. But make no mistake, they are still wrapped in the trappings of free-to-play mechanics, and so you just need to be aware of that and to be smart about how you spend your money when approaching these games. Okay, that's going to do it for this episode of I'm Still Playing. If you found this guide to be useful at all, please leave a comment below and let me know. And if you're enjoying this content, well, liking the video and subscribing goes a long ways towards allowing me to make more of these kinds of videos. Until next time, whatever you're playing, play hard.